Hello everybody, and thank you very much for joining on so short notice, but today I really felt like, okay, I just want to go live again because it's been a while. I think maybe more than 1 year, and I'm happy to be back here on a live stream and hope you can hear me well. Please drop a message in the chat and let me know if the audio is okay. There should be also some background music, and that should be a little bit more, or make things a little bit more interactive. I hope that that's okay for you. Also, please know that I have started a Q&A session, and I think you can just submit your questions in that Q&A session, and I would be then able to pick them up and then answer them for you. That's obviously on YouTube. And by the way, right now, I think I'm streaming both on YouTube and on X, the former Twitter. I'm just curious about how things are going on with that specific platform. And once again, thank you very much for tuning in. And yeah, I wanted to start basically a new series. Probably there will be a lot of different videos in here, which is the Code Wrinkles Playground. Now, the Code Wrinkles Playground, I want to make it a series about something, okay, let's build something, but not necessarily, I don't know, something that we want to launch or have it as a product, but let's build something from which we can actually learn a few things that we might be even able to apply in other projects, like in the projects where we are working. So it's not only about, well, having a UI or I don't know, do the different stuff, although we might do something like that also, but it's the idea that, okay, we want to build something, and also something that I can learn from myself, because obviously I don't know everything, and obviously there are a lot of things, for instance, with which I don't really work daily. There are some things, for instance, that I have worked maybe 1 year back or 2 years back, and obviously I don't remember them as well. And I still also have to kind of like refresh a little bit my memory, because hey, I'm old, I'm over 40, so I forget things. So I need to keep my memory fresh. So that's why I just want to, okay, start learning something. So I was really thinking a lot, what should I start with? And I even asked a question in the YouTube community, but also on X. Fortunately, it was very short notice, because it was only today afternoon that I asked the question. And yeah, there weren't too many answers. But today, as I was running, I was thinking about, okay, what do I actually want to do? And I was thinking, okay, let's go to something which was actually my first love when I got into tech. Not really into development, but into technology, in the times when I worked at Microsoft, for instance. So back in the days, I was a pretty good expert on things related to Active Directory, Active Directory Federation Services, Azure Active Directory, and things like that. But I haven't quite worked with things similar to that for a while. Obviously, at work we are using Azure Active Directory, or the new Microsoft Entra ID, or whatever they want to call it now. But yeah, just to kind of like, well, have authentication with the corporate accounts in our application, so it's not really a lot. So I was thinking, okay, what if we start and try to build an identity provider? And the challenge is, okay, I want to build an identity provider, but by using as few libraries as possible. The idea is that, okay, I don't want to really reinvent the wheel, or, well, maybe I want, just for the sake of this stream, but it's with the idea or the scope or the goal that I want to kind of like learn something from that. It's not that I could do things better. I'm aware that I'll probably or will do things much worse than any other identity provider, obviously, but it's kind of like a learning opportunity. It's a learning experience from which we can actually learn something, I guess. So I'm wondering, is there anybody on Twitter that actually did something or said something? Oh, I have 7 viewers on Twitter. Well, X, sorry. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm really happy to have you here. Also on YouTube, don't forget there is a Q&A open. And yeah, please submit your questions. And I kind of like try to find out how this works, because the last time I did a live stream, there was not this Q&A part. So questions. Okay, I see there are some questions. Will this identity provider follow the OAuth protocol? Can I I think I can pick this question up. Select question. Okay. Cool. And I think this question might even appear on screen somewhere, hopefully. So the question was, will this identity provider follow the OAuth 2? So my idea is that yes, I want to actually make a full identity provider with all the basic functionality. So obviously we'll start most probably with user management because hey, you just need to have users first. So we'll need to do a way kind of like for regular, let's call it authentication. But then the whole idea of the identity provider is to kind of like, for instance, if I write my own API, I want to be able to use my own identity provider for authorization and for issuing tokens and for validating tokens. So that's the whole point, and that's why we will have to follow both the OpenID Connect specifications and standards and OAuth for authorization. So we'll need to come at a point to actually implement everything, and the ability to add applications and to add roles to these applications, and I don't know, maybe custom claims for each application and a lot of things similar to that. So as I said, it's an idea that kind of like is maybe 2 hours old also for me, but I hope that's something that will be able to evolve basically within the next live streams and come up with ideas and start from something right now. That would be probably today we'll be just looking to the user management and password hashing and I don't know, things like that. And then we'll build it out. However, let me check if there is another question here. So another question, will this identity provider follow the OAuth protocol? Yes, I think this question I already answered. What's in your cup today? Haha. Okay. Let me select the question. So the thing is, I'm not sure exactly if this question appears on screen somehow. I hope it appears. But I'm not sure if it appears on screen or not. Yeah, so in the cup, I guess it's a glass this time. And it's Coke Zero. It's kind of like late. And I really need a little bit of energy, definitely. Okay, let me also close this question. I don't want to end the Q&A. Let me go back to the live chat and then let's start. I see that there are already some people here. Okay, voice is clear. Kathleen, hello Kathleen, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining, and thank you all, by the way, very much for joining. There is one other thing that I wanted to say before we kind of like get into coding, and that thing is that the source code. So after each live stream, I will make the source code available for members. So if you want to get access to the source code, please feel free to just go. Also in the description of this live stream, there is the link to join this channel as a member on ambassador level, and I will send the source code to you. Probably it will be tomorrow morning, because as I said, it's kind of like quite late here, and most probably after I finish this live stream, I'll go directly to sleep. Yes, the questions show. Cool. That's kind of like really cool. I am really happy to hear that. Okay. Let me check. We have 8 viewers on X. Thank you very much for joining on X. I'm really happy that you are here. Okay. So, what do we actually want to do? So I have set up, or I have created here a blank solution, and I found a kind of like hopefully cool name for this identity provider is Cerberus. Now Cerberus is, I think, the Greek god that was basically guarding the gates of the underworld in the Greek mythology. So I was thinking that might be a cool name for an identity provider, no? It's definitely cooler than Entra ID, or I don't know, whatever. Well, I definitely think it's cooler than that. So we have here this solution, and yeah, we'll need to kind of like start with building up our let's say project structure. And oh, by the way, there is one important thing that I want to mention here. What we'll do, and really that's very important, and that's where you also can come in. What we'll be doing during live streams is every time we'll kind of like building basically all the functionality based on an API. Now, if anybody wants to build some front end for that API, like, I don't know, maybe with React or Angular or whatever you want, then feel free to just drop a message and let me know that you want to build a front end for that one. And then we'll set up some very, very cool stuff, because we'll set up a project on GitHub, we'll have issues, and we'll work on those issues, and we'll kind of like also have this grasp and see how this collaboration between backend and frontend actually goes when you work on real projects. Because when or while somebody is doing something on the front end, there might come up the idea, okay, we need this other thing from the backend, so we'll need to build that. So if anybody, once again, if anybody wants to create a front end for what we build during the live streams, that would be great. And I will also showcase the front end during live streams. So the things that you build on the front end, if you want to do that, I will show the functionality also during the live stream. So it will be really end-to-end and a good publicity. And if you want, or if that person wants, you can also join me on stream, for instance, in some occasions, and we can do a stream together. Or if you know any other, I don't know, content creator that might be interested in doing the front-end stuff for what we're building here, I don't know, maybe ping him, let him know, and let us get in touch. But the important thing is I will not build the front-end here. We'll just build an API, because I have come to the conclusion that front-end is really not something I love. And it creates for me a lot of frustration while trying to do front-end, even though I can do front-end, so I really did. I even wrote some Angular even last week and 2 weeks ago, and I've come pretty far, but I really hate doing that. And to not create a lot of frustration and then maybe, I don't know, give up again, I will just concentrate on the backend APIs. And if anybody wants to create a front end for that, I am more than happy. I would be actually thrilled and excited if that could be possible. Okay then, good to see you back streaming. Thank you very much, Vidas. I know that you were always a very, very loyal follower, I would say. So thank you very much for joining here once again. Cool. Now, let's start, as said, with building out the project structure. As said, I don't really have a very, very clear idea of all the functionality and how things will look like. But I assume this could become a fairly big project. So I think I'll go for a regular setup here, what I have or what I like to do in most of my projects. So I'll have my domain layer, and we'll try to go for something like a rich domain model, in which we'll try to do a lot of things in the domain model itself. That's my aim for this. So that would be the domain, that would be a class library, and I think that should be okay. .NET 8 also. Obviously we are using .NET 8, let's just delete that. Okay. Now what is the problem here? Cool. This is the domain. Let's add one other project. So what we'll also need is the application layer, or the use cases if you prefer the clean architecture terminology. That would be also class library. Now let's also delete this class, because we'll just add a bunch of different folders here. Then we'll need to persist some data here. So new project, class library, and here I'll have Cerberus infrastructure data. Usually, or most of the times in the projects that I've seen, the infrastructure layer itself doesn't contain only data, contains a lot of other stuff, and I usually split them into different projects, like probably, or usually there is one project which is infrastructure data for data, and there is one project infrastructure Azure, because most of the times we are working with Microsoft Azure. So yeah, okay, cool. We have this one, so here is where we'll go for Entity Framework Core at the beginning. Although for some things we might opt to kind of like also go into something else, because there is life after SQL. So life doesn't end with SQL. Cool. Let's have here. Hi, I see you from Colombia. Thanks. Thank you very much for tuning in from Colombia. I think in Colombia is kind of like I don't know what time is. What time is in Colombia actually right now? I think it should be very early in the morning, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, let me know. Cool. Obviously, whenever you have some questions, just drop me in the chat or drop the questions in the chat. Let's do it like this. So if you have questions that are related to what we are doing here right now, like what this identity provider, then just please ask the questions in the chat. Like it's where we want to have the regular discussions. If you have questions that are off topic, please use the Q&A. And I will check from time to time also the Q&A to see if there are any questions there, but I don't see any other question right now that comes on that came up. So yeah, I'll go back to the live chat. So once again, if you have questions related to what we are doing right now here, then hey, just please ask the question in the live chat, and I will be more than happy to have a discussion. If you have some questions, I don't know, could be really, it's an ask me anything, so you can ask me anything. Programming related, non-programming related, there are two topics I will not go into, which is politics and religions, but otherwise, well, we can really talk about anything. So if you have, we can talk about the technology drama that's going on, I don't know, because there's always some technology drama going on. I think I've heard something about OpenAI, I've heard something about WordPress. That was kind of like a little bit more ironic because I think everybody heard about WordPress, but I'm sure that there might be some drama in .NET that I'm missing. So yeah, so if you have any question that's off topic, that's not related to what we are doing here, please use the Q&A, and I will check it from time to time. Okay, let me see if everybody still sees me, and I think people still see me, which is great. Thank you very much for tuning in, by the way. I see there are a lot of people here. What do you think about microservices? That's a good question. That would have been a question for the Q&A also. Let me check if that question is actually also in Q&A. No, it's not in the Q&A. So I cannot select it so that it appears on screen. That's the reason why I wanted to ask these questions that are off topic in the Q&A, because I can pick them and they also appear on screen. And then everybody can basically also see the question, which I think it's fairly cool. But regarding microservices, there is a video on the CodeWrinkles channel, which is called Microservices Are Evil. So that's what I think about microservices. Obviously that this sounds very, very dogmatic, but in reality, my view is a little bit more nuanced. What I say, or what I think when I say that microservices are evil, is that we are bombarded with a lot of kind of like information and, well, assertions and kind of like invitations from different gurus to do microservices, because Netflix does it, because who knows who else does microservices, and microservices are so great. But the reality is that microservices, if kind of like you don't really understand the complexity that they need, that complexity also translates into cost. Microservices are very, very expensive. And I've seen kind of like startups, like VC founded startups, basically going bankrupt because they wanted to go microservices from the beginning, because hey, Netflix does it. And you need to be able to afford the bill for your microservices. You need to have the organizational structure to run microservices. You need to have appropriate team roles, appropriate people to do very specific tasks, or very specialized people on specific things that are kind of like very, very specific for microservices in the end. It's really very, very complex. So if you have the organizational structure, if you have the financial backing, if you have appropriate teams, not teams, so appropriate teams, if the business model, the business functionality justifies it, then obviously going for microservices is a good option. But in 90% of the cases that I've seen people going for microservices, well, there was no need for microservices. This identity provider depends on the database. Yes, obviously we will need our database. So we will have the database and we'll create it. Let me check if there is some other question in the Q&A. I think there is here. Let's see how where is it? It's pickup question. Where is the pickup? Select question. Okay. So here I'm working in a company where they still use Windows Workflows projects from .NET 3.5. To be honest, I heard about Windows Workflow projects, but I have never worked with them. Unfortunately, well, that's probably not a very good experience. So maybe you should try to get into something else. There's these other questions. What do you think about... I don't know what this is. Let me check this once again. Just the question. What do you think about IT? About it or IT? Okay. So if you can please rephrase the question a little bit, because I don't really understand what you mean by that. That would be great. Okay, let me go back to live chat. Okay, this identity provider depends on a database. Yes, that's something that I have already said. Cool. So we have application, we have domain, we have infrastructure data, and what else do we need for now? We need the API. New project, ASP.NET Core Web API, and I will Cerberus.api. Okay, next. So I want to have it on .NET 8. I want to have HTTPS. I don't want container support right now. I want to have Open API support, but not necessarily for Swagger. And the reason why I won't use Swagger at all right now is that starting with .NET 9, we won't have Swagger anymore. So it won't be built into, let's say, the template that you get when you create a new project. Obviously, you can add the Swashbuckle libraries and you can still edit and work with Swagger, but it won't be there by default anymore. So I want to kind of like get a little bit accustomed to, well, what's coming. And I definitely want to use controllers. I don't really like minimal APIs for these types of project. So I will use controllers. Okay, let me just, I think we are set with this. So let's just click create right now. Okay. So we have the API. Let me go to the solution, properties. Let me set the startup project. Okay, where's the music gone? The music is gone. Why is the music gone? Okay, we have music again. Let's be happy. Cool, so I want to have a single startup project, and this startup project I want to be the API, obviously. Apply, okay. So we are also done with that. Now there are some things that I want to do here. First of all, I don't need this weather forecast, so delete. What else? Controllers. I don't want to have this weather forecast controllers, delete. And I don't want to actually have the controllers folder because I usually like to structure things a little bit differently. Let me just also remove this text. Okay. I don't like these comments that come from by default, so that would be it for the program.cs. Now in the properties, there are some things that I want to do here is for the launch browser, let me have it to false. Let me also have this to false for the HTTPS profile, and to make for, although I probably won't use the IIS Express, but I still want to do this like this. So I will call the HTTPS endpoint. Well, I'll just copy that because one other thing that I would want to do right now is to set up a Postman collection actually. Okay, let's see what we have here. Is there anything else? Okay, what library are you planning to use? OpenIDICT would be great. No, I say it once again because I said this in the real beginning, but I think I want to re-emphasize this is the goal here for this series in the playground is both for me and I hope, hopefully, for you also to kind of like learn something. And the thing is that what I want to do is for the, let's say, domain of the thing that we want to implement, in this case, the identity provider, I don't want to use any library. I just want to code everything by ourselves so that we kind of like get into, well, different problems and see, okay, how do we hash passwords? That's actually a great question. I obviously have kind of like an idea about how hashing password should look like using a salt, using proper hashing algorithms. But if I would have, or if I would need to start right now to, type, directly how should I implement this, I would have to look that up. And in fact, during these sessions, we'll heavily use ChatGPT and Copilot and what other AI there is, because it allows us to kind of like move quicker, and that's very important. But it's still very important that we actually understand what the AI gives us. So it's not that we just rely on the AI to, I don't know, give us code, but we need to understand it, because in a lot of instances, the code that it gives is actually, well, very bad code and prone to problems or to bugs or to security vulnerabilities or other stuff. So yeah, I hope and I plan to not use libraries at all as far as I can. Obviously for the database, we'll use Entity Framework Core because we don't want right now to kind of like, create an ORM. But if we create a series in the playground about creating an ORM, then obviously I won't use Entity Framework Core because I would like to replicate that functionality and see how it is to try to build that functionality and what I can learn from that. So that's the whole idea, and we'll try to implement our own ways of kind of like looking at the OpenID specification, looking at the OAuth specification, at the different flows, and how can we implement them. So we'll definitely try to do that ourselves. Okay, so let me go to Postman here, and I want to have here a new collection. Okay, what's the problem here? New collection, it's no problem. Let me choose to, where is it? Should be renamed somewhere. Where is it? Man, I'm blind here. Let's name this all like this. And let's just create here, for instance, right now, a new request. Something went wrong. Why is something going wrong? What's wrong with you, Postman? What's the problem here? What's actually the problem here? Okay, it goes like this. So it will be this base URL. So we'll just keep it here for now. We don't save it because we don't do any requests, but probably there will be kind of like API and then everything else. Okay, let's start by doing some stuff here that are important for the initial setup from my point of view. And I think we'll start from the different use cases that we might have in the application. So what I would like to do is have my API version. So managing get packages, we need to install a bunch of new packages for that. And ASP.versioning. We need the MVC. Accept everything, and the API Explorer. That's also what we need. So versioning is important because it kind of like defines the folder structures that we will have in the API. So I think that one should be it. The versioning HTTP is only used for minimal API, but as said, I don't like minimal APIs for this purpose, so we will not use that. So now we have this versioning here. We have these packages. Let me then just here, okay. Now, builder.services.add API versioning. Okay, and I think that should be from the package. You see, for instance, versioning is not something that I really implement every day, so there might be things that I forget about here. So what do we have here? Default API version. Let's see here. New API, Copilot didn't really suggest or things that I wanted. Okay, use ASP.NET versioning. So regarding versioning, here I would like to have, this would be the default version, it would be version 1. Let's have it here. Assume default version to version when unspecified, and we can set this to true. The default for this is, by the way, false, and actually I want this to be false, so we will not set it at all. And the reason why I want it to be false is that if I have versioning in my API, kind of like it's documented, it's part of the contract, I want my consumers to respect that. So one very important rule that I use in my life in general is never assume anything. And I think this rule applies also to programming. So why should we assume a version in the name of the consumer? So if you as a consumer were lazy and didn't provide a version, why should I assume one in your place? I think it's bad. I think it's not the way to go. So if I have versioning, I want consumers to actually respect that and do everything that's necessary. Okay, what else do we have here? Report API versions. Yes, that's, I want to have to true because I want, this would add headers basically to each response that would specify which are the supported versions of the API. Probably right now we'll have just one, but versioning is a very important thing for your APIs, and it's something that we should definitely have. What else do we have here? Assume default API version reader. Okay. New URL segment version API, and this would actually read from the URL segment. So this would read the URL version from the URL itself. So that's kind of like an important thing. That's what we actually want to have in our application, and hopefully this will work correctly. Let me check what else do we have here that we will need. So we have the segment version reader. What else? Assume default API version equals get policies. I'm not interested in policies right now. Then report API versions. That's something that I already have. Route constraint name to string. Okay, I think for now that's all that I want to add here. Now the only thing here is that I think we need to add something else here, but I'm not sure exactly how that worked. So, you know, right now basically I don't really know exactly. Okay, I know that there is something that I need to do right now to actually apply or instruct exactly how I want this library basically to read the version from the URL and how I specify it. And there is a group format that has a version that's padded that starts with V, a version that's non-padded, and a version that's padded that starts with P. And then you can provide the format of the version that you want, and so on and so forth. So I know this, but I don't remember exactly, okay, what is the exact syntax. So, hey, ChatGPT, I am building .NET 8 API and I want to add versioning to it. How should I configure my program.cs? I am using the ASP. How was it? Versioning.mvc and ASP dot versioning. How was the name of the other package? MVC API Explorer. Okay, and let's see what ChatGPT gives us. Oh, why doesn't it submit? Okay, hopefully ChatGPT will give us what we need. Configure versions. Okay, so this is what we already added. Here's the API versions reader. Okay, it prints the entire and also configures it with Swagger. No, that we won't need anything. So you see, that's why kind of like we need to still understand what we actually want from here. So it's not that it simply just replaces me. So add API versions, that's the options that we have. We have the default version, assume default we have set. Report API versions and the API version reader, we have used just one of them. You can obviously combine them. That's something that I knew. And then it's this one. So that is what I wanted. Now, what I didn't know exactly was I thought we should kind of like create a variable because this returns basically the builder. And then on that one to actually run this. But I think it's like this. So yeah, let's see. Let's see if ChatGPT was actually right here. Okay. Probably here we'll need a package or... So you see ChatGPT here, but that's definitely what I needed. So that's the exact syntax, but it seems that somehow, kind of like this one, let's say fix with Copilot. My experience is that fix with Copilot never actually fixes things. I don't know, what does this say? Add version API Explorer. But it's basically the same thing, so I don't really see the builder services. Okay, accept, but it's the same thing. So you see, that's what I say. My experience with Copilot is that it actually never solves anything. So with Copilot, you actually, if you have problems, you still have them afterwards. But and actually, it changed me everything here. Oh my god, it ASP versioning. It messed up everything for me. This API Explorer, why? Because it should be here. So I'm not sure exactly what's wrong with this one. No, fix with Copilot will not fix that. Let me try this. Var, but no, because it's exactly the same. It doesn't really change anything. Add API versioning. No, it's the same that we already have. Doesn't really want to do that. So let's go back to Copilot. No Copilot, to ChatGPT. So, why are you doing this to me, ChatGPT? Okay, we're versioning, we're clear with that. So this time, once again, ASP versioning API Explorer. We have added API Explorer. Add endpoints API Explorer. I don't think it's correct. Okay, it seems it is. Or it is not. So at least the method exists. Nah. Copilot also. Okay, you know what? We'll actually go back to .NET. Okay. Let's see. Oh no, that's wait. Okay. Add API Explorer. But it also doesn't really exist. So what am I doing wrong here? Let me check. Are you moving from software development to more like security stuff? It looks like this is your interest lately. Oh no, definitely I'm not moving to security. I want to have a quiet life. And goal is to utilize Okta. Joined a little late, so trying to understand. No, the goal is to actually simply create our own IdP from scratch without using any library, to actually learn what are the challenges of building an IDE from scratch. So it's basically just for learning purpose. Okay, you have it. You have it on top. Okay, I don't know exactly what I have it on top, but it's probably something regarding this one. It's on Add API Explorer. Okay, let me check this one. Okay, so let's try this one. Aha, that's it. And then we can simply use it. So yeah, I remembered something, but you know, I should have trusted my instinct. Okay, and, now we don't need this one, and it should be okay. Add API versioning, add API Explorer. Yes, thank you very much, Kathleen. That's true. That's what I was missing. So this is not available directly on the services, but only after add API versioning. So that's totally correct. Okay, now here we want the non-padded group name. That's what I want, and I want just to have the major version on it. So I have it right now like this. And let me, I don't know, create just a basic folder. So the way that I want to structure this is, I said that user management is the first thing that we will work on. And here in user management, so I like to structure also the API project according to the different, let's say, sections of functionalities that I have in the project. Now I know that user management will be one of them. Maybe let's try to, I don't know, keep names a little bit shorter. And yeah, I have it like this. So that's why, okay, we have user management functionality. Then I kind of like have this user management here. And here I can add, let's say, the versions, the different versions, or folders for different versions. And in each folder, I can have the controller, I can have the contracts for each version. And it's kind of like, from my point of view, okay, because I won't have very ugly controllers like user management V2 controller, or models like user sign up V2 DTO, or whatever you call it. I think that's ugly. So if we organize things this way, we can actually have each version with its own contract while we still keep the naming. So I'll have, for instance, here I would have a new folder which it will be called V1. Now in case there are things regarding user management that are not version specific, we'll place them directly here, basically in this user management folder. Thank you for doing this. You're welcome. Thank you very much for joining. I'm really happy that you joined. By the way, I would also appreciate a lot if you could just say hi and let me know where are you watching from. I know already some people told me they are watching from Colombia, I remember, and from other countries, but I would really like to understand, okay, who's watching from what geographies right now. That would be very, very happy, nice from you, and I would really appreciate it. That would be totally exciting. Okay, so from Switzerland, Hans Damm, thank you very much for tuning in. From Romania, I'm glad that I have also people from Romania here, because that's where I live. Okay, I'm watching from Poland, very nice country. Lithuania, yeah, Gvidas, Lithuania. From the UK, Actually, the company that I work for has the headquarters in UK, in Bristol. So I visited Bristol, I guess, twice this year. Okay, Portugal, one of my favorite countries, but I visited only once, unfortunately. Brazil, never been there, but hope to together someday. Sweden. The customer for which I enjoyed the most to work was from Sweden. So I'm glad that I have somebody from Sweden here. Okay, let me briefly check if there is something in the Q&A. Once again, we also have a Q&A, and if you have questions that are not related to what we are doing here, please just use the Q&A and ask me anything, really anything. You can ask me anything and we can have a discussion. So let me check what other questions do we have here. So what do you think, okay, about IT? That's not, why use infrastructure layer? I thought this was an external concern. You could also rename your infrastructure data layer to persistence. Yes, you can name it like data, persistence, whatever. So basically that's where our, well, persistence layer, yeah, I agree that naming is okay, maybe better, but I don't know, maybe it's just that I'm kind of like accustomed to do it like this, so I have well, infrastructure data. Data is an infrastructure concern, like writing data to a database is an infrastructure concern. Like in this project, we'll probably at the beginning we'll use SQL, but you could use whatever else you want. And by the way, let me go to select question. So that was the question. So why use infrastructure layer? I thought this was for external concerns. It is an external concern. Like writing to a database is an external concern because it's kind of like, it's not something that we do in our application, in our process. Like the application runs in a process. So when we write data to a database, does this happen in the same process? No, because the database is somewhere else. So it's a request that goes via the network. So it includes also networking. There's a networking part related to that. So that's why, from my point of view, it's still infrastructure. Like the data persistence layer, that's part from infrastructure. I say, usually I have two, by default, mostly two projects in infrastructure, like for data and for Azure, because most of the projects that I work on use some services from Azure. But depending on other integrations or whatever, you might need to talk to other APIs or other external services, I might have even more projects. But they belong to the infrastructure layer. So it's not necessarily that if you have one project that represents one layer. No. Critically, we could even have all the layers in just one project, like we have them on folders. So we could definitely do that. Yeah. So that's my take on that. I'm not sure if, well, at least that's the way I see things. Doesn't really need to be the, well, perfect one or the supreme truth about this. Okay, close question. Okay, no other question in the Q&A, so let me go back to the live chat. Okay, Sweden. So from where else are you watching? We have Chile. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's very late, or kind of like very early, basically. It's 3 o'clock there. 3 a.m. in the morning. How comes you're still awake at this hour? That's good. Let me check Twitter. So I have 16 viewers on, well, X. Sorry, I'm old. I'm accustomed to Twitter, so I might say Twitter, but it's X. I have 16 viewers. Hello everybody that's watching me right now from X. I really appreciate you tuning in. That's really nice of you. And one other thing is that if you think what I'm doing here is useful, obviously all of you that already commented are subscribers to this channel, but please share it with others. Like invite others to also watch this and subscribe to this. All videos will also be available, like the live streams will be available on demand afterwards, so everybody will be able to kind of like watch them. So yeah, do that. From Luxembourg, thank you very much for tuning in. Okay, so let's say we were here at the folder structure, so we have v1, and how do we want to name our controller here? Should I create a Let's create a dedicated, because actually we'll have only one controller probably in each folder. So unless it's necessary, I'll just add here a new class. But I don't want to add this with controller because I want to write it my own. Let's just keep it simple, users. Okay, that should have been users controller. Cool, so that would inherit controller base, but it would be really great if I could even type decently. But it seems that's not an option. From the US. Chirag from the US. Thank you very much for tuning in from the United States. I think depending on where you are, but it's also very, very late or early there, so I appreciate that a lot. Okay, so what we have here? First of all, we have an API tutor. Okay. I want to also have or define different routes, and here's what else I will do. And I know some folks will probably hate me for this, but I will have this common folder, and in this common folder I will have a new folder that I will call constants, and here I will have a class, and I will have API endpoints. This class can even be static, and in this class I'm not sure, we'll probably extract maybe some further once it's needed, but here I'll also have a subclass basically, not public, once again static class. Thank you, Copilot. Thank you, Copilot. Finally something useful. Finally something useful. So that's actually exactly what I needed. Here we have a base path, which is the API v1 in this case, but the only thing is that we need to replace this v1 with kind of like, here it needs to be a v, and here it needs to be the version. I think at least maybe, I think it should, I don't know, have something like this in itself. So that would be the base path for the user management. And then we have, okay, users base plus users. But this is the only, I think we'll rename these constants a little bit. So when you create a new API version, how you keep the compatibility between the old and the new one? How new API has the new functionality and the previous? It's simple, because if I have a new version, I create here a new folder, I name this folder v2, and in this v2 I will have, let me just create a new class. Guess what? I will have users controller, and this users controller will actually be exactly the same. The only thing that will be different is that for this controller I will have API version, and I think the version needs to be a string here, so that would be version 2, and API version 1. You see, and these controllers are in different namespaces, and that's why I can have two controllers that have the same name, but they are in different namespaces, so I can reuse them. So I don't have to use ugly things like users v2 controller or things like that. The same goes for all the contracts that we have for each endpoint. So in fact, I am watching from Greece. Thank you very much for tuning in from Greece. I spent some of my vacation this September at the beginning in Greece. I like Greece very, very much. So it seems that the music is gone. Where is the music gone? I think it's not gone. I think it's just some very quiet music. Let's switch to something else. Let's switch to something else to have more energy. Okay, so we can even test this. So let me just go briefly here. We have base users API version. So, but I want to have these just users. Okay. But actually, I think I could have here a const. So I have the API version here, and I don't want, or I don't need it to have it here. And then, let's say display many. I think we might change the names here a little bit. So this would be kind of like the base, okay, to which we just apply or append users, okay. And then display one, that would be, let's call it, I don't know how to call, naming is hard. Canada. I'm watching from Canada, around 4 p.m. here. Okay. So we are preparing for the weekend actually right now. Let's call it just users. And for now, by ID. So this would be base/users, and by ID would be kind of like users plus user ID. And I think we should be okay with that right now. So if we go to this user controller in v1, so we have this version. Let me just have here, let's define the route here. Route, okay. The route, here should be the API constants. How did I call that? I don't think it's API constants, API endpoints. On the NPI, this is not the base, that's the user management. And no, I think that's it. Or no, I think it's this one, because I think that should be the base path for users. Everything that represents the user resource kind of like is under this URL. We have here users, and that would be it then, I think. Let me check. Okay. Daniele Giovinetti, hello everyone from Italy. Thank you very much, Daniele, for joining. Thank you very much for joining. How are you doing? Daniele is one of the Gold Wrinkles members for quite some time. So that's why he has this badge to his name. So I think it should be the correct one. So we have the route. Let's have this also on the version 2. And let's not here, but here. So let's create here something like, I don't know, public action result, get users, whatever. We just want to return something, but actually what we will return here is not an array of users, users from v1, and we'll have actually the same method that we'll have in this one. This would return users from v2. Okay, now we can see how we can basically reconciliate this and have different things here. and have different versions, working actually side by side. So we have this one. I think we should be kind of like good to go. So let me go to Postman. So it would be here /API/ let's try with v1 first /users. Obviously I have to run the application first. So let's run it. Let's run it. I think it should run. So /API/ v1 /users from v2. And here we just change this one. And here we have users from v2. So our versioning actually works right now. And that's how you can reconcile them. Because on the v1 controller, you have all the functionality there. And on the v2 controller, you can modify the functionality, add new functionality, whatever. So you can do whatever you want there. And as long as the consumer specifies the version, everything should be fine. And actually, if we go to the response and to the headers, also see that API supported versions. So you see that here we have version 1 and version 2. Because I have set up API versioning to also tell me this, like what are the supported versions of this API. So it kind of like we have this header, which is kind of like very important for the consumers, because this is how consumers can check and know what versions they are using. If there is a deprecated version, you can also have it there. So yeah, it's kind of like quite powerful. So we have set up versioning of our API, just as easy. So we'll work mostly with the v1 right now. And yeah. Okay, first, what's the very first thing that we need to do actually? We want to be able to create a new user. Probably there will be some admin that will create users. But we need to imagine this, what I think about this as an IDP is something like for an internal company, like it will only be used internally. Let's imagine Code Wrinkles is a huge corporation, yeah? It's a huge corporation, and we obviously want to have our own identity provider, like our own, let's call it Active Directory or whatever you want to call that, where we will have all our employees, no? Like we have thousands of employees around the world, like you, for instance. We have employees from Brazil, from Chile, from Greece, from Luxembourg, from Switzerland, from Romania. We have employees from everywhere, and we want to manage their identities company-wide, but not externally. So there will only be employees. So that's the aim for what I want to create this identity provider. So we have this version. So let's start by creating a user. I will always or try to start from defining the contract. For now, we don't know exactly, okay, what folders will we need. We'll see exactly as things evolve. So for now, what we need here is, for this v1, let's add a new class. But you know what? To make it explicit, I will add a new folder in the v1 contract. Now there is one thing that I really think it's good, not because kind of like, well, it's technically better, but it kind of like makes us understand and view things and look at our application in a certain way. And since we're developing here a public API, well, public means that it will be consumed by somebody. Could be only an internal application of the company, but it's still a public API. So whenever we create APIs, we need to think in terms of contracts. Like API is, well, an interface, like the acronym implies. An interface in programming, what is it? It's, well, actually, it's just a contract. A contract that defines exactly, okay, if you as a consumer send me a request, let's say a post, that contains a certain body that is in this exact format, then I will give you a response that is, or that has a body that is in this exact format. So that's why APIs are contracts, and that's why I like this naming, like contracts, and that's why I like to place them here in the API, because I see people placing this type of contracts and I don't know view models, they are placing them in the application layer, but I think this is not the concern of the application layer. This is the definition of the API contract. The application layer doesn't need to be concerned with that. That's really something that needs to be treated at the edge, because it's this specific contract that we define. So here, if for instance we just want to create here, let's have here an add a new class. I don't know, let's call it user registration. We can even have this actually as record, but I will keep it as a class. It's kind of like, I think it's a little bit ugly when you have records to kind of like use the data validation. So what we'll have here, so what will we need to create a new user? So we'll need here, assuming that the user has already an email, we will need that email. What we can do here is that, okay, this string is required. Public requires string password. Yeah, definitely we need the password. Probably we'll also need to hash that password at a certain point. The user, but you know what I am thinking right now? You see kind of like things evolvement. I really haven't thought about this earlier. From my point of view, I said we want to build something for a company, yeah, for the Code Wrinkles company. So these are not users, these are employees. So it's not users. So we need to change everything. Name. Or should we? I don't know. How should we name this? Should we name these users or should we name these employees? This will be kind of like them responsible, or will actually go through all the layers. So we'll use the same terminology. So if we deprecate the same controller in both versions, does that not violate the try principle? I'm not exactly. If we duplicate the same controller, the idea is that actually the name of the controller will be the same, but if you need a new version, it means that something changes in the contract. So it means that it will not be the same controller. So you see, even in our case, here the contract is basically, I could define this as a return type, for instance. So the contract would be that I will return you this, but in this one, the contract is that I will return you this other thing. So it's kind of like not duplication, because they do different things. And if I don't want to have this functionality, or if this functionality hasn't changed, so it doesn't mean that when you add a new version, basically you kind of like need to, okay, change everything. But here you can add also only the functionality that has changed compared to the v1. And obviously there should be a plan for deprecation. And by the time you want to completely remove version 1, you would move all the functionality that's still relevant in version 2. And you can then just delete the controller for version 1. So you can just not use it anymore. But this is not a violation of the dry principle from my point of view, because these are not the same. If you have different things here, it means that something changed in the contract. So it's not the same anymore. When we are defining our API endpoint routes, how are we going to follow single responsibility when we are defining multiple routes for multiple responsibilities in that one class? I'm not sure I got the question. In what class? In the constants? The constants class is just, there are some static constants. So the thing is that, for instance, if we want to change something at our route endpoints, if we hardcode the strings here in the routes, we need to go everywhere basically and change things. But if we want to change something for the routing strings, like right now, the only place where we need to change is on the API constants. So I'm not sure I did understand exactly what you meant by that, Christopher. Did you mean the API constants or what exactly? And Bogdan, ubiquitous language. Yeah, exactly. Ubiquitous language. But you see, ubiquitous language should start from the business. So basically, you listen, you hear how the business talks, what words it uses, what concepts it uses, and then you transfer those into code. But now, in our case, I just have this idea that I want to create an identity provider for my Code Wrinkles global corporation. But since this doesn't exist, basically is, well, I don't know how to name things. Do I want to name these users or do I want to name these employees? Okay, so my solution would be to use a static partial class for users and one, for example, application. Okay, we could definitely use partial classes for that, but that would mean I would just have to split this in different classes. I mean, the responsibility of this class as a whole is to hold some constants. It holds this class that holds some other constants. And the responsibility of this class, this, let's say, outer class, is very clear here. And this inner class, let's call it like this, has a different responsibility. We could even use partial classes for that, but why should I want to create different files? I don't know. I think there's still separation of concerns here, because that's why we split this in two different classes actually. But I also want to keep everything as compact as possible. On the other hand, if employees are going to register or log in, then we should name employees, or at least connect employees to a user. So obviously they will log in. So probably somebody like a company administrator would create their accounts when they get hired, and they would have to log in. So yeah, they would be then employees. But you know what? Okay, let's keep it generic for this. Let's not. But you know, these type of discussions I think might be very interesting and hopefully also valuable, because that's how we can kind of like learn. Also, don't forget to, well, probably you're already subscribed to this channel, but maybe if you think it's useful, make sure that kind of like you spread the love a little bit and invite also others to watch this. They can even watch later because all the live streams will be available on demand afterwards. So yeah, basically I would appreciate that a lot, really a lot. Okay, so that's definitely an open discussion point, Christopher, and I think your approach is definitely valuable, and it's kind of like worth considering. But I don't really see how this setup right now violates this idea of separations of concerns. And yes, we could split this in partial classes, but why add a lot of different other files if I can have everything here right now? Like, if it turns out that we'll have here, I don't know, thousands of lines, we will want to maybe split everything in different classes. We could use partial classes then, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, so we have successfully implemented versioning. Let's stick with users for now. Let's not waste time in renaming things. I think that yeah, doesn't really help a lot. Let me briefly also check the Q&A here. What do we have? Sorry for all the background noise. I'm living at a very busy street, and yeah, at night sometimes people just feel like racing their cars or, I don't know, bikes. So I see here a question, actually two, to this one. Let me pick this. Okay, select question. The question is, where do you see .NET in the current market where everyone is rushing towards Python, Rust, Go, or anything else? So, my take on this. Now, I'm not sure if you are aware of my background, but for basically 8 years, I'm working for a company that's basically, well, to be honest, it's an outsourcing company. There are pros and there are cons for that, but I think there are some really great people there at Amdaris, and that's why that's the reason why I'm still there, because every day I learn something from people that are actually smarter than me, way smarter than me. So obviously there are some disadvantages of working in outsourcing, because you change contexts a lot, you get a lot of different projects and different customers. But one thing that's actually very important, or one advantage from my point of view, is that you get to really be in touch with a lot of different potential customers. And in the role that I'm right now at Amdaris, like as a technical director, let's say that I'm also involved a little bit in the pre-sales phases, and kind of like I'm involved in a lot of opportunities. And even if I'm not involved personally, the other fellow technical directors are involved, and we have regular syncs, and we really get to understand or be in touch with a lot of different customers. And right now, basically, Amdaris is part of, let's say, a global company which is called Insight, and we right now have opportunities right all over EMEA, at least, but also outside EMEA. And that's already the case for 1 year. Now, the good thing about this is that actually it gives us the opportunity to have an insight on the market itself, because we are not dealing with only one customer, but during 1 year, we are in contact with potentially maybe hundreds of different customers. Like, not all of them become our customers, but we are still in contact with them. And let me tell you what I see from this perspective. Like, the idea that everyone is rushing towards Python and Rust and Go or anything new, that's actually not true. So in the market, that's actually not how things happen, or at least in the market of mid-sized and enterprises, which are our target customers, let's say, this is not happening. Now, the problem here is, and I think that this is indeed a big problem. The problem is that all over the internet, we have different, I don't know, influencers and people that make you think that, hey, I'm talking every day about, I don't know, NeoVim. That a lot of people get the impression that everybody's using NeoVim. In the end, there are literally 2 people out there in the world that are using NeoVim, and they are happy, and I'm glad for them that they are happy. But it doesn't mean that everybody's using it, and it's the same with the programming languages. Now, regarding Python, I have to tell you, and I agree with that, because we are doing a lot of data science and machine learning projects with our customers, really a lot. So in the area of data engineering, data science, machine learning, Python is definitely the default language, I would say. So that's true. But for all the other languages like Rust and Go, once again, talking about corporate, like mid-sized companies and bigger corporations, like what I mean is companies, these are usually our customers that have more than 1,000 users, usually. So in those companies, actually, you have a lot of Java, so we get a lot of opportunities on Java. You have, even right now, and it's not automotive, a lot of C++, because there are, for instance, banking or banks or I don't know, other type of institutions that have some legacy systems that are so old, basically, that are written maybe in C++ or even COBOL. We had an opportunity with COBOL, and they want to modernize that. So what I see is a lot of Java. What I see is a lot of, really, in these enterprises, .NET, but very old .NET. What I see is a lot of C++ in combination with Java and or .NET, because C++ was used for kind of like some very low level stuff, but they have another layer on top of that that kind of like exposes that functionality right now to more modern applications that they have internally or externally, and they want to modernize right now basically everything. And to be honest, I also see a lot of JS maybe also. So that's also something that's quite there. But Java and .NET in these ones are kind of like really the most, well, so if I make like a very brief overview of the number of the developers that were asked for us for different programming languages for these customers, Java would be number 1, .NET would be number 2, right now C++ would be number 3, Python, maybe Python would be number 2 because we have a lot of, I said, projects also with data science, and we use a lot of Python. But when you think about Rust and Go, as I said, I've been in contact, or me and my colleagues have been in contact with a lot of companies around EMEA, big companies. We, until now, this year, we didn't even have one opportunity with Go, and we didn't have even one opportunity with Rust. Once again, from hundreds of opportunities in which we were engaged till now. So, once again, this might create a little bit like a false impression because people are hyping on the internet a certain programming language. It doesn't really mean that that programming language is really used everywhere and that everybody is rushing towards it. Obviously, Go is a very good programming language, and I really think that Go is a very good programming language and a very good alternative maybe to C++ or things like that. So it allows you to do a lot of stuff. I know it's used by a lot of companies, obviously also, but to say that everybody's rushing towards it, that's a little bit of an overstatement from what I see. Obviously, once again, it's what I've seen. As I said, me and my colleagues, we have been in contact with hundreds of potential customers discussing technology this year. Obviously, there are hundreds of thousands of other companies out there that might be using, I don't know, something else, Rust or Go. But I still think that it's not a rush towards other languages like Rust or Go, especially because also in Rust there has been a lot of drama lately with the Rust Foundation and things like that. So maybe not lately because not in the previous 1 or 2 months, but this year. So I really don't see this this happening. Hopefully I answered your question. So Python is still definitely a thing, Java still a thing, .NET still a thing, JavaScript still a thing. Not everything is Rust or Go. Okay, let me go back here to the live chat. Let me go here back to the live chat. So what we have here, there are less opportunity on freelance projects as compared to Node, Python, etc. So yes, I said JavaScript, yes, but once again, this is also a huge topic because when it comes to startups or smaller companies that tend to hire also a lot of freelancers, definitely Node.js rocks there. So in that segment, the JavaScript ecosystem is basically number 1 probably. And it's true, we these type of companies are not our target customers, let's say. But I'm aware, so in that specific, and I also even said earlier about JavaScript, so JavaScript definitely a thing. But really, people don't rush to Rust and to Go. So there is no rush to those languages. Corporate environments rather than small startups. I believe this is because many people don't want to trust Microsoft and opt for other source stacks. So this idea that, okay, I believe this is because many people don't want to trust Microsoft. I don't think that's necessarily a trust problem, but I think it's more a problem with the tooling and everything around. And I know I run a .NET channel, and I always expressed myself very in a very transparent way and very frankly, and that's why I probably will never be, I don't know, quoted or a Microsoft MVP, because not everything I'm saying is actually on the liking of Microsoft and other MVPs and things like that. But the idea is that the problem is that people would probably trust Microsoft, but it's on the other hand very hard to get started with .NET in a startup. And I'll re-emphasize it. It's very hard to get started with .NET as a startup. Let's say that I want to open a startup. I create a startup. Okay, so CodeWrinkles is right now not a startup anymore. It's not a corporation anymore. CodeWrinkles is a startup. So we are a startup. We are just a bunch of people. Like we are watching right now. How many are we? 17. Okay, so we are a startup of 17 people. Now, and we want to start building something like an identity provider, for instance. So I am sitting here at home and I have a Windows computer, and I actually like Windows. So I wouldn't want to go to a Mac. I don't know why, but I kind of like hate Apple generally. It is what it is. It's like that. I don't have to justify that necessarily. Linux, I'm okay with it, but guys, I'm old, I'm 40, so I don't want to get accustomed with some Linux UIs. I obviously can operate a Linux machine because it's kind of like I've done some, well, deployments or worked with app services on Linux and so on and so forth. But for daily use and development, I wouldn't like Linux, so I want Windows. But I'm sure that somebody of you probably is using a Mac right now. So if you're using a Mac and I'm using a Windows, somebody is using is using Linux, and we want to get to start on .NET. So what IDE will we use? Okay, I could use Visual Studio Community Edition, which is free, and it's okay. I could use that, and I think we wouldn't have a licensing problem as a startup. But somebody that uses a Mac, what would you use there? Because Visual Studio is not available on Mac anymore. So you can't have Visual Studio Community Edition on your Mac. Or maybe you can have an older version, whatever. So it's really cumbersome to start with that. I'm not sure if you can run it on Linux at all. So you would theoretically then need to use VS Code. But VS Code, kind of like, okay, you need to use the C# dev kit. But the dev kit also doesn't really come for 300% if you're doing it this way. So the problem is here that we already have, well, a problem in our startup. And that's why we can say, okay, to hell with all Microsoft related. Okay, .NET is great, it runs cross platforms, it's backed by a big corporation, so I would trust, for instance, this in terms of security and other stuff, but it's a hell to actually navigate it as a startup. Instead, let's go to JavaScript. Like in JavaScript, everybody installs VS Code on whatever type of operating system they want, and yeah, then basically that's it. We can just start coding, and in a matter basically of 10 minutes, we can all be started and writing code. Like if we choose .NET, we can't do that. If we choose .NET, there's a lot of things to kind of like think about, to set up, so it's really cumbersome. And that's one of the reasons I think that .NET is kind of like not the first choice of startups. And there is also a second reason why I think like that. Now, if you would do, let's say, a global survey of the age, let's say, of .NET developers, probably most of them are mid-30s and higher. If you think about, if you kind of like have the same survey for people that are, let's say, using or working mostly in the JavaScript ecosystem, probably the average age will be under 30. So who starts startups? Usually younger people. So obviously, naturally, probably they were already exposed more to the JavaScript ecosystem than to .NET, and they will obviously also choose JavaScript. Okay, what do we have here? We cannot create constants as part of partial class because they are declared as static, and we are retrieving static variables based on the API version. Cool, yeah, that's true. For sure, Blazor is a great technology. I think technology-wise and from the architecture perspective and how it is set up in this newest version of .NET 8, I think that Blazor, once again, from architectural perspective, from very deep technical point of view, is the best front-end, let's say, engine or framework that we have right now. I think it's better than Next.js. I think it's better than the new Angular Universal. Once again, the way that the SSR challenges were tackled in different frameworks, I think the most mature way or the most mature solutions to those challenges are in Blazor. But obviously, Blazor will never become a ubiquitous front-end framework. It will be used by .NET developers probably, or in companies where .NET developers or where .NET is already used. I see Blazor kind of like growing there, but I definitely don't see Blazor becoming like a major contender as a front-end framework. But still, I think that, once again, technically, I think right now, Blazor is the most mature, let's say, framework, or when we think about the SSR part. Like, I think it's better than Next.js, I think it's better than Angular Universal. To be honest, I'm not sure about other frameworks, like there might be some in Vue, there might be some frameworks, I don't know, PHP probably, I don't know, there might be, but I'm not aware of that. So that's okay. For sure, Blazor is a great technology. So Ali, that's a great answer. Thanks, Ali. I'm not sure about what answer you were talking. The one about Blazor, or what we discussed earlier about why startups don't actually use .NET. Okay. And now there's an ambulance passing by. Sorry for that. There's also the biggest hospital in the region where I live is kind of like, I don't know, 300 meters from my house, and there are a lot of ambulances running. And no matter how much my window is directly on the street, so even if it's closed, even if I have, I don't know, phonic isolation as good as I can, it can get better than that. And yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, I can't simply just move somewhere else and move my studio somewhere else. That's where I can do this. So sorry for all this background stuff. Cool. So I see that there were a lot of questions and I really enjoyed this. Let's check the Q&A if there is something else here. So where do you see .NET in the current market? Oh, that's something that I already responded. Go is very simple, while C# seems more complex because it's often more options for accomplishing same tasks, which can make it difficult for people like self-taught to choose the right one. How to cope with that? So once again, I'm bringing this question forward. So Go is very simple, while C# seems more complex because it offers more options for accomplishing same task, which can make it difficult for people like self-taught to choose the right one. Now, I am a self-taught developer. I didn't study computer science. I did study philosophy and theology. So I learned programming all by myself in the early 2010s. So, and I started with C#, and I still think that actually C# is a great language if you're just starting out. Obviously, a better language I think would be Python. I don't particularly tend to agree that Go would be a go-to language if you're just starting out. The reason for that, from my point of view and from my limited experience with Go, because please don't think I'm a Go expert. I tried it out a few times just to be aware about the programming model, about how things go there. But in Go, there is a lot of stuff that you still need to understand deeply and take care about things that are more low level than what you have in C#, for instance. And that's why I don't think actually that Go is probably a good language for starting out. So for somebody that is a self-taught developer or wants to learn to program right now, maybe, I don't know, by watching YouTube or Pluralsight, or I don't know what other resources might be there. I think obviously the number one, like it's the easiest to get started with. You find a lot of resources on that, and I think it's a language that's very simple or easy for newcomers would be Python. Then probably my second choice would be JavaScript, because JavaScript is ubiquitous and you find really a lot of resources, and it's also really not that complicated. It also has the advantage that you just need kind of like basically just a browser, and you do some stuff and you see it right away there. So you have this kind of like instant gratification. Now, when you are playing around, when you write a line of code and you can almost instantly, or actually instantly, see the result of that line of code. Now, that gives you a lot of dopamine as somebody that tries to learn, and I think that that's the reason why actually JavaScript is also a great language to get into programming. But I really think that at third place is C#. Right now, also the setup, the way that you can just run the application just right away with minimal ceremony. I also think it's a very simple or it's a good language to actually get into. Now, what I would advise people to start, like if I would mentor somebody right now that would say, okay, I want to start learn programming, so what should be the first step? I think what I would suggest would depend on what exactly the goals for that person are. Like, if your goal is to be something like an indie hacker, to just create your own stuff, create as many things, launch as many things, see which of them work, which of them don't. So if you just want to be an indie hacker, or if you just want to kind of like, I don't know, be more involved in startups, in really small companies, then I would definitely suggest JavaScript. If your goal to learn a language is to kind of like get a job that has let's say a certain degree of more predictability, because nowadays it's hard to talk about job safety, but a little bit more predictability in the future, then I would probably advise to start with C#, for instance. So that's what my take is on this one. Once again, might be wrong, but I think it's rational and based on critical thinking and analyzing the things that kind of like I'm aware about right now. That's my stance on it. So I don't actually think it's so bad to start with C#, and I would probably not recommend somebody that wants to learn right now by himself or herself to start with Go. So I probably wouldn't do that. Hope that kind of like also answered the question. Like, let's see, do we have something here in live chat? Hello, what about React? Artem, what about React? Well, it's the most popular front-end framework nowadays, so what can we say more about it? So obviously, if you want to learn React, most probably you will find something to do, so certainly. But here I think the trick is, especially for people that are starting out, I think the worst thing that we can advise them is to start to learn React. Now, if you know anybody that wants to start learn programming right now, don't advise that person to start learning React. Advise that person to start learning JavaScript. That's the most important thing. Learn JavaScript first. And then, if you want to go to backend, you can go to Node.js and stuff. If that person wants more frontend, they can go to React, obviously. But please, I think that's a bad idea to start learning a framework directly. Start to learn a language first. That's, from my point of view, a very, very important thing. Hello, what about, so this was what about React. So I live in Colombia and I've seen two Blazor app. One of them is in biometry, and an entire country, more than 600 or maybe more, are using this application, and it works very smoothly. We have at our company, we have projects that are using Blazor, and those applications are applications that are used by thousands of users. So we definitely have Blazor working in production. It's definitely a viable option. One framework I love, and it's an amazing, it's Ruby on Rails. I really don't know anything about Ruby on Rails, but I watched the interview with DHH and the Primogen. So yeah, after that interview, like the way DHH talked about Ruby and Ruby on Rails, kind of like made me want to take a look at it. To be honest, so I don't know about that, but probably you're 100% correct with this one. So why invest effort there when it could be used to improve .NET itself? Do you see any unique problems in it solves, rather than simply offering an alternative solution? Ali, I'm not exactly sure what are you referring to right now. The thing is, you have to know that there is a certain delay between when I say something and when it actually arrives to you. It happens in live streaming all the time. Like even if you are watching a football game, when you say that kind of like, I don't know, somebody, I don't know, there was a goal. Actually, in reality, that goal happened maybe a few seconds back. So I always get things, or you get things a little bit in delay, and then until you write down your question, I kind of like lose a little bit of context. I'm not sure exactly what are referring to, Ali, right now. So what we have this next question: where to start learning about dividing the solution into layers? Okay. In which order to learn that? Now, the first thing that you need to learn is basically the programming language. So you can definitely just do in console applications, and or I don't know, use Windows Forms applications to have this type of, let's say, instant gratification that you do something and that you can run it, and that application might do something useful. But at the beginning, just learn the programming language. Doesn't really matter how you structure a solution, doesn't really matter anything at all. You need to learn the programming language, and you need to understand the programming principles behind that, and only then you can go to the next level and try to, okay, now how do I do maybe, or how do I do things maybe a little bit better, and basically only then you can go into concepts like, okay, clean architecture, how to divide your solution, and things like that. And actually we went into this basically even during this live stream. But when I say, when you start programming, you shouldn't care about anything. Let me show you something. And I want to show you something here. Guys, this is the very first application I ever wrote. My very first application, like 12 years ago, when I started to learn programming, that was my application. Maybe we should do a live stream, I think, on it, and do a code review together, because obviously it's really, really bad. Now, the thing is that I kind of like, it's a program, let's say project management application for in the construction field that I made for my wife, actually. And the first major thing or wrong thing that I've done here is that I've named my classes and a lot of things in Romanian, you know, because, well, hey, I was programming something that needed to display things in Romanian. So I simply just started to name everything more or less in Romanian. So that's the first thing. But if you take a look at what we have here, let me, I don't know, maybe get myself a little bit out of the way, like that. So what we have here, no folder, nothing. Now, if we take a look, okay, we have some classes like that would define like an authorization that's needed for a certain construction. It's a total mess. Like, okay, this property is named like this. These properties are named kind of like badly, so that's not the correct convention. They are all named in Romanian, so it's just a regular class. I have here a business logic, you know. That's a huge class. So what do I do in this business logic? I don't know. We use the SQLite connection, so I use the SQLite, by the way, but I have everything there. Like, everything is in these functions. Really, everything for this Windows Forms application is in this function. Now, the good thing about this is I've built this application, and it actually it works. I tried it out like 2 days ago. I just needed to update the .NET framework. I started with .NET framework, obviously version, and it kind of like works. I have this one. I can open here a new project, for instance. I can see here in this project I see some financial details, like the money that I got, the money that I have spent for that project, and yeah, there are a lot of things here. I can add new contacts. I can see, so this application is working. And it's the really first application that I have written. Is this an application that kind of like uses clean architecture? Obviously not. Is this application something that's kind of like, I don't know, doing anything right from, let's say, a coding perspective? Obviously not. It's totally bad. But yet still that's an application that worked. And you know what happened with that application? And I think this will totally answer your question. Now, what happened with this application is that I arrived at the point where my wife was asking for new functionality, and this application right now as it is, it's in a way that if I wanted to add new functionality, I did break other functionality. So basically I arrived at the impossibility to actually build this application further due to the way that actually this application was constructed from, let's say, an architectural point of view. And this is important because I realized basically firsthand, so not theoretically, not by just reading a book, I realized that I need to bring some structure into application. I realized that having all the logic, basically like handling the data, doing calculations, everything in a single class, in a few methods, is not a good thing. So I've learned this through experience. And then when I went on to read about clean architecture, you know that everything made sense, because I saw how this actually solved the problem that I was having with my current application. So that's why I think, first of all, try to build something without taking into consideration any clean architecture, any architecture principle. Try to just learn the programming language and build something with it. It could definitely look like it looks the application that I have built, and that's okay, because that's how you will actually learn and understand, and you will then better understand when you learn about, okay, layers of the application, and you will remember the problems that you had in your application that you've built, and it will make sense. You'll understand them. The problem nowadays is that people already start to learn programming and then go into, I don't know, YouTube tutorials about clean architecture, about domain-driven design, about CQRS, about I don't know what. And it's normal that you don't understand anything, nothing clicks, because you don't have a practical reference to the problems that kind of like those buzzwords actually solve. So my advice is start to first kind of like just concentrate on building something without taking into consideration anything about all the fancy buzzwords that you hear. Just use the programming language, just use it as procedural as possible, just get things done with that. That's the most important thing from my point of view, and then go to the other concepts. Okay, so I don't see a purpose of .NET Aspire if we can't use it in production. I understand that Aspire was primarily designed for developers. Yes, Aspire from my point of view is just a tool that helps a lot the developer experience, but not only the developer experience, actually it helps a lot with kickstarting projects, like onboarding new people on the projects, running projects locally. Aspire is totally cool for that. But at least at that point, I really don't see it to be more useful than that. But that's, from my point of view, that's already enough. Like, I remember when I worked on the first project with microservices, I spent, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks trying to just figure things out. What's the URL? What's the port there? What's the port there? What's the port for that service? What's the credential for that one? It was a total mess. Like, it took me a lot to get started with, to just run a project. Like, now with Aspire, basically this becomes way simpler. Okay, so then you must give a try to Rails. You're gonna love it. I will definitely do that. Could you please recommend a resource or book that will help me understand clean architecture? I always say, when it comes to clean architecture and generally to everything, go to the source. So go to the Clean Architecture book by Uncle Bob and read that book. If you want to go into domain-driven design and understand it, don't go to watch videos, don't go on Pluralsight, don't go buy Eric Evans' book, Domain-Driven Design, Tackling Complexity in the Heart of Software, and read the book. So always, when you want to learn a concept and you want to go, let's say, or you want a book on that, go to the original source. That's, from my point of view, the most important thing. That's where to start. That's where to start. Cool. I see. Thank you so much. Also, thank you. Let me just check once again if there is anything else in the Q&A right now. But I really am impressed. There were so many questions. I would end the Q&A right now because, guys, we talked a lot and I really enjoyed this, and I really am grateful and thankful to you for tuning in here and having all these discussions. And I really hope you will be back on the next live streams. So just keep an eye on the channel, because my schedule is very hectic, so I can't really plan everything in advance. But I will try to announce all the live streams both on X, on LinkedIn, and on the YouTube itself with the community. Make sure that you're subscribed to this channel, because right now it's midnight and I have to actually go to sleep. And for the source code, Bogdan, yes, all the members will receive the source code as usually. You just check the membership tab, check it tomorrow, because today probably I will just shut everything down and I will go to sleep. But I will make the source code available after each live stream. There will be the source code the way that we left it, so you'll get it. Right now there's not much to it, but you'll have it. But after the next live stream, we'll surely have more than that, and then you'll also get it. So everybody that wants to get the source code, just become a member, a Code Wrinkles member. There's a link to join as a member in the description of this video, and just do that. And all ambassador members get the source code for all these videos and the source code for all the videos that I actually do on the Code Wrinkles channel, if there is source code available for that specific video. Because for the last one, for instance, there was no real code to share, but for the next one that will be published on Sunday, there will be source code to share. And once again, ambassador members and higher will get the source code afterwards. Just check the membership tab where I announce exactly, or I give instructions where how you can get the source code. So yeah, all the Code Wrinkles members will get the source code for this one. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you very much for asking so many questions. This was awesome. Probably this was the best stream from my point of view. Like, I felt it as the best stream so far, because it was the most engaging one. It was the one where there were the most questions, there were really nice debates, there were really good points made by you. And I really enjoyed that a lot, and I hope we will be able to replicate this also in all the other live streams. So this being said, I really have to stop now, because yeah, I kind of like have to go to sleep. But stay tuned, stay close to the Code Wrinkles channel. There will be some more awesome stuff, awesome content. Not only videos, not only live streams. I have already some things that are cooking, and you will see them. Probably members that are on the Discord channel will get to see them first, and well, they will know things a little bit in advance. But there are things coming on from the Code Wrinkles side, so keep close. Thank you once again very much for tuning in and watching and getting involved. And until next time, I really wish you only the best, and just well, as a classical life would say, keep coding, no? Yeah, so bye, have a great day.